Okay. So in the architecture tab, you can select the roof by footprint and then select the pick walls so that we can add our boundary for the roof. Select the overhang to 1 foot. And if we hover over the wall and then hit tab, it will select the entire chain of walls. So all I'm doing is hovering over, making sure the dashed line is on the correct side, hitting tab once, and then picking that wall when they're all highlighted, and it creates all my walls. As you can see when we were doing this, define slope was unchecked, so in the top left here. So none of the walls are shown right now to have to define the slope. And what that is so if you don't see any of the right triangles here, we can left click and drag a window and select all these walls or all these boundary lines. Go to our properties palette, and then we'll have some options here for the overhang, plate offset, extend wall into core, and then the define slope is at the top. If you check that, all these little right triangles will come up. And then all these lines will define the slope of your roof. So here it looks like you've got it set to degrees. So right now, all these lines from parallel to the line all the way back up at a 30-degree slope, it's going to create a slope, and then they'll all intersect together to form a ridge. So if I hit finish edit mode, it's going to create that roof based on what we defined. So if we go to our 3D view, so there you go. I'll turn the DPI on my mouse down so I can not moving around so quick. So if we go to our 3D view up at the top here or under view, you can see it automatically generated the roof at a 30% slope from all of our boundary lines to create our roof. And we can check our reference materials to see that it looks pretty close. It looks like on this end, they're gabled ends. So we'll have to uncheck those boundary lines to tell it not to define the slope. So actually, if we go back in here, were you able to do that, Ben? Follow along? Did that work out for you?
Yeah, seems to be working.
Cool. So it looks like your roof plan is oriented like this. So this would be the back of the house on the north side. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we can actually edit this roof in the 3D view if you don't want to switch back and forth by editing footprint. And it appears help me orient myself here is so is this that back
That's
wall?
The front. Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it looks like there would be 2 windows here, but this end is a gabled end. Looks like your overhang might be further than a foot, so you could actually play with that further if you wanted.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. So here, if you select the lines that you want to go all the way up and create a kind of peak and a gabled end, you just uncheck the define roof slope, and now this line will no longer define that slope. And then the same thing, it looks like this end is not sloped either. It's just, it comes over to the peak and then just stops, and there's another gabled end. So uncheck those. And then now we have the gabled ends that are similar to what our reference material looks like. Then to make our walls, obviously the wall, there isn't an opening here. So to make our walls go up to the bottom of the roof, we can select our wall. And then I'll make that bigger so we can see. When you select the wall, it'll give you these options under the Modify tab for detach base, attach top base, and then edit profile, which this looks like we can just attach the top. And then we just pick the element we want the top of the wall to attach to. When it says attach top / base, you can change it to attach the base over here on the underneath the Modify tab. You can pick base or top. And so this will attach, since it's at the top, we can pick that roof and it will attach right to the roof. And as you can see, this little wall down here also doesn't do that. So like your top plate would be here, and then they'd put blocking in there for the trusses to sit on. And we can do the same thing here. We can attach the top to the roof, and then it cleans up that join there. And so you'd want to go around and do that to any areas that are not attached quite to the roof. And so we can do this to the other side. Just select the wall, attach top base. It should automatically default to top. Even if I were to choose base, it'll change back to top every time you repick it. So if I hit attach top, it's back to attach wall top and pick the roof. And then we'll clean up this corner here and attach that also to the roof. So it looks like in your reference material, there's a little carport out front.
Yeah, there is.
So if we wanted to add that, which would be, I'm going to tile the view so I can see. And that would be out of this face, right?
Yes, it is.
So your reference material doesn't show that, but that's okay. You can just add posts out here to support the roof like this shown here by going to structure, column, and then you can add in a column to support the base. You probably, there probably isn't a concrete or structural steel column out there. They're probably 2x4s. So you would go up to load family so that you could load the appropriate family for the columns. Does anybody have, at this point, does anybody not have, I think it was last week, we were talking about some folks, Revit, when it installed, it didn't install the family library. Does anybody still have that issue when they go to load in a family, or have they tried to load in a family?
No, mine's working. All my family seem to be in there.
Okay, good. So you'd go to, so at the, it will open up, I believe it'll open up to the last place you open, but if you haven't opened it before, it should open right up to the English Imperial Library. And I believe it automatically adds the library in your favorites for Imperial and Metric. And so you'll scroll down to structural columns, not the architectural columns, which you could do that, but I never actually used those. You can see there's not a ton of options. They're more fancy columns. But if you go down to structural columns, it gives you quite a bit more options. We'd want probably a 4x4 post. And I believe you want dimensioned lumber. So once you select the type of column you want, these columns are based on a text file. A lot of families are driven by a text file that have a lot of data in it, so that you don't have to load all of the columns. You just load one column based on the ones you pick. And I'll show you once I hit open. It's going to bring up this specified type for the family, and it's going to give you a bunch of information concerning the type of columns that are in that text file that it's drawing from. And so then you would want to pick your 4x4 posts. If you think if you might want other columns in here, then this would be a good time to add those as you go in. But you don't have to, because you could just load them later, or you could modify the family within your project. So just select the columns that you want, or any family that you want that you have in here. If you loaded multiple ones, it'll give you, so if I were to go back and load multiple types of columns, it will have all of these columns, and then you would select each one and define which family's sizes you want to bring in. And you can see here, most of you probably are familiar with 4x4 is actually 3.5 by 3.5 inches. And then it changes once you get up to the 4x8. It'll be, instead of an 8-inch column, the actual size is a 7.25. And you can see that reflected here in the Revit families. So you'd hit OK. And it's going to load in those columns. It loaded in just the first one that we loaded. So I'm going to put in a 4x4. So since I was in the column placement command and I hit load family, it's going to place it in and load. If you were to just load family from the insert tab, you won't see anything. It'll just load it in, and there won't be anything that you can see. You'll have to actually go find it and place it. But since we're in the column command, it'll start by allowing you to place the column. And so I changed it to 4x4 post over here on the properties palette. Right now, it wants to start at level 1, and it wants to place it down, or it's going to want to give it a depth of 9 feet, which will be negative 9 feet. So if I were to place this right now, it would actually place it below level 1 because of that depth. So just remember, if you're in the column command, it's going to be default placing at depth. So you'd want to change it to height underneath the ribbon here. And then I would typically want it connected to the top plate or a level. And so now if we place this column, you can see it places it from level 1 up to the top plate level. I'm going to take a look at my reference material. And so it looks like they've got 3 columns, and this other column is somewhat lined up by that door. So in the plan view, let me see here. So we have a column set. Oh, so here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to align. I'm going to go to the modify tab. I'm going to hit align, and I'm going to find the edge of this door, and I'm going to put the column, the far side, aligned with the edge of that door. And then the other column looks more or less to be aligned with the edge here. And so I'm going to hit align again, take the grid line so it's aligned with the face of the stud, and align this face. Hit tab if you're having trouble getting the face. So if you hit tab, it'll toggle through all your possible selections. And then, oops, I want to align to the grid first and then to the side. And then I'm gonna space this column centered in between these two columns. So the next column, I'm gonna go up here and hit copy or CO. I can pick anywhere and just drag 90 degrees up or north. And really I can put it anywhere because I'm going to use the dimensions to make this column equal spacing between these two. Which looks like it is. It looks like it's almost equal, splitting that window mullion right down the middle. So what I'll do is I'll go up to annotate, align dimension, and I'm going to pick this grid because that'll be the face of this column here. I'm going to pick the face of the other column. And then I can pick the center of this column. So when you're in a dimension, it keeps the dimension going so that your dimensions can be aligned. So I can pick a lot of different points here. And so that I have one string, you can see, looks like that's what bended up here, which is good because then all the dimensions are in line and they're like neat and orderly. And instead of like, going up and down. But so, DI should be the default command for dimension. So again, if you hover over, you can see align dimension is DI. I click this grid. I'm going to click the center of this post that we just placed, and I'm going to click the backside of that other column. And then you can see, well, the dimension is still selected, and I'm still in the dimension command, so I could continue dimensioning if I wanted. I can click this equal sign that has a little cross out, which means that it's not equal. If I hover over that and left pick, it will make that dimension equal, and it'll force whatever that middle element is to be equal. So say you wanted to do that on you wanted to make this wall centered between the door and this wall, you could hit equal and it would move that wall or move that window because that's what the middle dimension is selected. This also works for several elements. So if you had, and actually that's an interesting thing too. Because we have this equal constraint, it moved that door to stay equal between this wall and the window. So the window is equal. To uncheck the equal, you just select the dimension again and hit equal. And then we could move the wall or move the window. We could copy another window, select this dimension. Instead of having to add another dimension, we can go up to the top and hit edit witness line. And it puts us back in that dimension command where we can now add another string of dimensions here that are still connected. And if we were to hit equal, it would place two windows equally spaced between the center of the edge of that door and this window. Sorry, that was a little segue on dimensions. So now that we have these columns, how deep is a car? So if we're making a carport,
well, the wheelbase on a full-size truck is 161 inches.
okay. So if we wanted to make this carport deep enough to have a car fit underneath the roof, we can select all of these columns that we just placed. So if you left click, hold it down and window over them, it won't activate the dimension until we hit activate dimensions up top while this is selected. And then now it'll give us some dimensions that we can use to modify the placement of these columns. And then you said 160 inches?
Yeah, that's the wheelbase.
Side to side? Is that front to back or side?
Yeah, front
width?
to back.
Front to back, 160 inches. Okay. So you select all these columns, activate dimensions. You can pick in this dimension. And because it is a default feet, you would either have to give it type 160 in the inch mark, or you would have to do 0 space 160. And so we'd probably want to give it a little bit more so that you have some room to work under there. So I'm just going to type 14 because it's a 13'4". Just give us a little bit more room behind the vehicle. To delete this equal dimension, you could either just delete it, but it's going to give you a warning that those dimensions are constrained. So there'll be an invisible constraint between these columns if we were to say okay, or we can hit unconstrained. And I'm going to hit unconstrained. So now basically what we did is now we'll go back to our project browser, go back to the top plate, and we can see these columns looking down on them. And we're going to try to add this roof over the top. It looks like it is a corrugated roof, so we'd want to make a new wall type for this roof. So to do that, we can go into the architecture tab, go to the roof by footprint. I'm going to hit my properties palette first, and then I'm going to make a new roof type. So I'm going to edit type, go to duplicate, and then what do you think? Those are 2x4, 2x6 joists. We'll just pretend they're 2x6 wood joists. So we'll name it appropriately. You can change this later if needed. Joists with a corrugated metal roof. And then just like the walls, we'll want to edit the structure. And so the 2x4 joist space would be 5.5 inches. So I'll do 0 space 5.5. I'll change the category to wood. We don't have the one I want in here, but that's okay. I'm not super worried about this. We have another video about materials. We'll just hit OK. And then we'll insert a layer by pressing insert. We're going to move it up so that this will be our corrugated metal roof layer. And we'll call it finish because I can't tell if there's plywood underneath there or not. But often there is no plywood layer. There'll just be those little corrugated wood spacers for the corrugation to sit on top. So we'll just pretend that that's what it is. We'll go to our materials. And if we go down to here to home, instead of creating a new material or duplicating it, which we showed you in the materials video, we can go to this home tab, which might be hidden. So we can go to this material library, click the little double arrow up, click the little arrow next to the AEC material, and we can look for roof. So we'll look under the metal category and see if they have a corrugated roofing. I don't see one, so we could just create a new one. So if we go down here to that sphere, create new material, you can right click to rename. Rename a roofing. rename it to corrugated metal roofing. I'm going to give it a surface pattern, just a foreground pattern only. And I'm going to create a new material for this. So I'll go down here to the bottom. This is new fill pattern. We're just going to do a basic pattern, and I'm going to call it 6 inch. Actually, it'll probably be more like maybe 2.5 inch line. We're going to want to make the angle 90 degrees. You can see it gives us a 6 inch or a 2.5 inch vertical lines. And we'll change the spacing to the 2.5 inch. Make sure to hit the inch mark so you actually have inches. Hit OK. OK again. And so now when we place our roof, it's going to be a 5.5 inch. And we're going to give it a thickness of, let's give it a thickness of 1 inch. Normally you would look up this material to see the dimensions of this corrugated roofing. But for this purpose, we can just eyeball it. I think that's roughly possibly the dimensions, but that doesn't, that's things we can look up later. Hit OK, and now we've created that new roof for our carport. And I'm gonna choose the rectangle this time because I don't have walls to pick out here. And it's a square roof. I'm going to leave it to not define the slopes. I'm going to give it the same 1 foot overhang. And I'm going to pick this corner here at the post that we just placed. I'm going to move out here. I'm going to go over here to this other post and pick because I can't see where the wall is. I'm going to hit align. I'm going to align to this grid, this boundary line. And I'm going to align this edge here to this overhang so that they meet up. So I'll pick this line that I want it to align with, this edge, and then click that edge to align. And before I exit, because this is a single sloping roof, I only wanted to define this edge as a slope. And you can see it's still defined by 30 degrees. And I'm just going to change that to probably even less than 15. We'll just try 5 degrees. So it's going to slope from this way. So if I were to draw a slope arrow. So here's another thing you could do. So you have your options for boundary line. That's how we drew this boundary line. You can also use a slope arrow. You pick slope arrow and you can draw a line that will define your slope. And then so now this arrow it'll start. You can look at the properties once you select it, and you can specify the height at the tail and then the height at the head. And right now it's going to start 0 here and go up to 10 feet at the end. And so that's another way that you could define your slope. But for these kind of roofs, we're going to let the boundary lines define the slopes. So if we go back into here, we'll let this define our slope just like we did with the other roofs. That's just another way you could define slope. And then now we've got our corrugated roof. I'm going to do something else here too. I think we did in the video is change the view range so that I'm cutting up above the roof so we can see the roof in its entirety. So up here we have the top offset. We're going to want to make it much higher so that we can see all of the roof, where we can see the ridge. And so I'm going to just set that at 15 feet and see if I can see the top ridge of the roof. And then I'll set the cut plane to 12 feet and hit apply. And it looks like that was good enough. So now we can see the ridge line of the roof. And we can see this roof overhanging the top of the roof, the main roof. Which it looks like it potentially dies into the side here. But I actually think it does go over the top because you can see how the eave is below down here. So I think that they've got this roof overbuilt the top of this other roof. We can check it out in our 3D view. We can see that the roof is not connected to this roof. So to fix that, we can go up to our Modify tab. Go over here to Geometry on the ribbon under Modify, and then we can extend this roof back. We can do that by picking this Join, Unjoin Roof. We'll pick this edge, and we'll pick the face that we want it to join to. In the video I posted, you can see there was an issue with complex geometry not really allowing the roofs to join correctly. And so, but you can see the different ways that you can fix that by watching that video. I think that this roof doesn't slope quite that much. If you hit this front view, it will take us to basically an elevation view of this side. And you can get an idea of how much this roof is sloping. If we want to edit it right here, we could double click on it or hit Edit Boundary in the 3D view and hold Shift middle click to pan. And I can change this to maybe just a 2% or 2-degree slope. And that seems like that's a little bit closer to what we're seeing in our reference material. Again, our reference material is just for reference only, so we don't necessarily need to be exact. But that's pretty much it. So drawing these columns out here to define your the boundaries of the roof that's not on top of the wall, and then extending it out, and then drawing a roof across that so that you have this carport that extends out. Is there any questions so far? Ben, were you able to follow along and duplicate what I was doing?
Yes. Yes, so far so good.
Good, perfect. And so we can see the back looks like we have the similar condition. And in the back, it looks like, as far as I can tell, they've got some posts out here. Just one post out here, and there's likely one over here behind this outbuilding. And so then we'd need to do the same thing in the back. And that looks bigger than a 4x4 post.
Yeah, it looks almost like a 4x8.
Yeah, so I'm going to use a bigger post out there. And actually, it looks like the carport extends back further as well over here. But anyway, as we start modeling these, you can kind of see how I'm using the reference material to get an idea of where these are placed. So I think possibly this one would need to come out further. If you wanted to grab a dimension, well, we'll leave it alone for now so I don't get sidetracked. You could use the measure command in Bluebeam and calibrate based on an assumption that this door is 3 foot wide. So if you hit calibrate, and tell Bluebeam that that's 3 feet and apply that scale. Now, if you were to go up here and pick the dimension tool, you're going to get roughly 3 feet for that front door. And so then you could take that same dimension, roughly center line of this window. And it looks like we can call that 17.6 or 17.8.5. So at least that's what, so we could take those dimensions under the annotate category. Grab the center of this window, center of that post, move that out to the dimension we took off of our Bluebeam reference material. Move it out to 17.8. Looks like there's another column back here. So I'm going to copy this column back. We'll just make it in line with this roof. So I'm going to hit the align command on the modify tab. Modify, align. Grab the face of this stud, align it to there. And now we can go back to our top plate. We could actually select our roof that we just created, edit the footprint. I'm going to select this magenta line, left click on it, and I'm going to hit move. I'm going to grab the face of this grid because that was the face of our column on this side previously. I'm going to move it back to be the face of this column where we moved it now. And so now it's got the correct offset. So now I'm going to add additional boundary lines because although I can't tell, and this is the part where you get to use your imagination, figure out what, since we can't see this side, we can just assume that maybe it just goes back here and then ties into the roof back or into the wall back here, but at that same slope. So I'm going to pick line up here in the roof boundary creation. I'm going to start at this corner of the grids, which should be your face of stud. I'm just going to go back. Let's just go back 6 feet. So if you're in a command, as you can see there, I am able to just type in whatever dimension I want. So when I'm in this line command, I'll do that again. I can pick line, get my starting point, arrow, move your mouse and your cursor over whatever direction you want the line to go. And I can just manually enter. So if I hit 6, it'll automatically put a 6 in there. And if you enter, it'll draw a line 6 feet out. Similar to AutoCAD. It's just it doesn't have the command prompt that shows you. And so I'm going to draw all the way back here. And as you can see, similar to AutoCAD, you can see that it gives you the intersection of that line. So you can just drag until it gives you that intersection. And then pick again, and then hit escape to get out of the command. Now we're going to go to our trim corner. Pick this horizontal line, and then create that corner, and do the same thing for this inside corner. So we can clean that up. And you can see we have our roof that's going back, similar to what they've shown, what the picture shows here, that it's extending back. If we bring open our 3D view, I'm just going to drag it over here. We can see that the roof is now extending back to the face of this wall. And in reality, there would be some flashing in here so the water doesn't flow into the back of this roof above. And we can use the join command, not the roof join command, but we can just use the join geometry that's right under here. If we wanted to join these two so you can see that it actually created some hard lines between those two roofs. So now if we get the side view, we can see our roof is sloping back past here. And so let's look at this back patio, because it looks like the actual roof is sloping back. There isn't a secondary roof. It looks like it's a continuous roof. You see the edge, it doesn't look like the pitch changes, so we'll have to modify this back roof to represent that. And again, Ben, if you didn't want to do that, it doesn't matter. So like, if you didn't want to try to extend the roof back here to try to make it look exactly like the picture, that doesn't really matter. What does matter is as long as it looks right in this view. So this would make sense that they had a house like this. Now that this roof isn't necessarily have to extend all the way back, but I'll show you how to do that if you want to try to get as exact as you can to your reference material. So I'm assuming we're looking, is it this direction here?
Yes.
This view? Yeah. So it looks like we're going to come across here. It's going to, I can't tell if it's squared off. It almost looks like they just extended the roof all the way across and ignored this jog back here. And so I'm going to make that assumption here. That's what they did. So I'm sorry. I'm gonna select this roof and I'm gonna edit the footprint. And I'm just gonna start by just trimming the corners. And so I just trimmed these two outside corners because it appears like that's what they did. And then I can left click over here and just drag, click and hold and drag to delete those two lines. You can either right click and delete or hit the delete button. And then I'm going to increase this overhang here. I believe we can just change the overhang for this side. And I'm just going to get an idea. Looks like there's a deck out here. Let's just call it a 6-foot overhang. You can see it automatically moved it out. We could take a dimension too, just to see that it actually did what we wanted to do by hitting annotate. Get our aligned command and grab the face of stud and see that it moved it out. Close enough. Oops. If we wanted to change that to be exactly 6 feet, we can leave that dimension there. Select the magenta line that we just moved. Just type in 6 feet. So for some reason, it is defining the distance a little bit differently. And I'm not sure if it's, I'm actually going to guess that it's giving us the dimension for 1 foot overhang at the 30-degree slope. And that's why we're not seeing the exact dimension. So yeah, so what it's doing is it's going down 1 foot, so it's not exactly a 6 foot overhang, it's a 6 foot overhang on a slope. Or something to that effect. So we could leave it at the 6'1" and 7/16. So now, and I think what they did too, as you can see, like now it kind of created a weird peak in here because this overhang is different than this overhang. It appears in our reference material, that's how they framed it. It does appear that they've come off this side an equal distance. So we would just need to go back in here, double click or hit edit footprint to get back in here. And then we'll define this overhang the same as we did the other side. And that should clean up our corners. We'll just check both. You also could window over both and change them both at the same time. You hit OK. And now we've got our overhang back further on this side. And as you can see, we don't have very much room for the bottom, but I think our pitch might be a little bit off. And so we can kind of eyeball it here to get the angle. So if we go back into our calibrated PDF, we can get try to get an angle for this roof. Let's see. It's saying it's roughly 22 degrees, so we can try to change that. It looks like it changed our pitch of our roof to be closer to what maybe our reference material is. I'm going to go ahead and go to this elevation because I want to see what it looks like in comparison to our reference material. And I'm going to take a dimension here to see if it looks right. And it actually looks close. So it looks like the overhang is just above the sliding door in the window, and it looks like that's what we have here. So if we go to our annotate, aligned, and it looks like we have a 7'6" from this level up to our roof. Oh, and I guess one last thing, because it looks like that this is a gabled end as well. So that seemed right. Maybe I'm just looking at it wrong. And what are your thoughts? What do you think the roof is doing on this side? We have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably right.
So we're looking here and it's. I feel like there is something that we're not seeing in here. As you see, the front of the house is what we're looking at here. It looks to be the same overhang on both sides. You don't have a good picture of this, so I'm wondering, this is what I'm thinking then. I'm thinking.
So I got a question for my roof too when you got a chance.
Yeah. Let me look. Let me think here.
Well, I mean, I can tell you it's a terrible picture of it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna add another line here because I think based on the reference material, and you know, as a drafter, when you could be trying to recreate as-built drawings based on field dimensions and photos that are incomplete. So I really do think this is a great exercise to try to recreate this. Again, if you're happy with what it looks like, I'm not going to like hold you to your reference material. They're just for reference. But just for my own, because I just can't leave well enough alone, I'm going to just fix it a little bit, and then we can move on to the next question. And then we can actually talk more about how to do this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice this line so that I can create 2 lines. Because if I were to trim, it's going to remove this line. So go up here to split line elements. I'm going to pick the line, and then now I can trim corner these lines. I'm going to make this overhang back to the 1 foot. It's trying to align with that one. So let's do this quickly here to kind of make it look what I think it looks like. I'm going to undefine that slope, and I'm going to see what this does. And could give us an interesting save the project. Sure. This is interesting. So Ben, if you wanted to continue to try to make it look more like this reference material, where I think this is a gabled end, and somewhere along the lines it slopes back. You can continue playing with it, and I can show you how to try to get it to look more like your reference material. But it's really hard to say exactly what it does. But as you can see, I think what I would want to do is continue to modify my roof until I can get it close enough to look like what I think it's supposed to look like, if that makes sense.
I just figured out something handy with mine. When I did my little garage roof, because it joins into my larger roof,
Yeah.
I built it to the footprint of the garage. So it was already sitting underneath the big roof. So it wouldn't let me join them. What I had to do was delete that roof and just make it like 2 feet wide at the front of the garage. And then it let me join it right in to the big roof. So I don't know if that's helpful at all for anybody, but.
Yeah, and I think in that video, if you watch that video, I was helping Jeremy with his roof, and we were trying to figure out, because he's got a kind of complex roof. And so what I ended up doing was creating several different roofs to create one roof. So as you can see, he's got a lot of different elements here, where this roof is dying into the top of this roof, but it's continuing beyond, and this roof out front here, this portion of the roof actually stops further back than this face extends out. And if you go through that video, you can see the process that I took to try to figure out all this interesting roof geometry. Oftentimes, if it gets too complicated, you could just leave well enough alone if you've got a profile that doesn't quite match. But yeah, I think like you were saying, so describe again. So you had a garage roof.
Yeah, I had a garage roof. So it's like a small another peaked roof coming out from underneath a long, wide main roof that was actually taller than the garage roof too. So when I built the garage roof, like I said, I did it to the footprint of the entire garage. So it built that shorter roof underneath, like running in completely underneath the other big roof. So it wouldn't let me join them at all. I had to make that roof to where it was only like a 2-foot wide roof pointing right up at the point at the front of the garage, and then basically extrude it back into the other roof. And it let me do that.
Okay, cool. And I see you have your Revit model up here.
Yeah, it won't have this roof that I just figured out on there. I'd have to reload this one now.
That's okay, because we can I can open it up and recreate what you did and see if that's helpful to anybody else. Yeah, again, that's why I extended the roofs for 2 weeks, because it seemed like with all the different variations, it could really get complicated. And be hard to, to do that in 1 week, especially with, this being the first time everybody's using Revit. So this is the one you were talking about, right? So
Yeah.
Basically what you were struggling with as far as you had it as, so you created this as a second roof, or and so you were saying you're having trouble, right? Because this won't want to join. If you go to join, if you try to click that edge to that edge, it's gonna cut it out weird, but it looks like, let's see, what's this other line?
Yeah, those lines didn't want to line up good with the interior walls either. So that's why I deleted that little garage roof.
Mm-hmm.
I actually extended the long roof out to the edge of the garage, like I think it should have been to begin with.
Right.
And then drew a new roof that was only like 2 feet wide right there at the front of the garage. And then it let me join it right into the main roof.
Gotcha. So when you're in a plan, actually, so if you're in a 3D view, and if you hit the top view, just we could actually move this. And you created a roof. Yes, we want it to create at the top plate.
Yeah, I basically just picked that front wall to start with, and then I hand drew my own lines 2 feet back.
Gotcha. Like that. And then you're able to just go to modify, join like that. Is that what you were looking for?
No, because the roof, instead of making it the whole size of the garage, from the front of the garage, I only went back 2 feet, and that was the whole size of the roof. So it was just like a triangle sitting up front.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there you go, like that.
Gotcha. And see, since I already joined it, I changed the profile. Profile shouldn't matter too much now because it's going to join to this roof. You see how like I dragged that profile all the way back? And even if I were to have a sliver out front here, it's still going to join back because now it's telling, if we were to click, we can actually click and unjoin it and see what our original profile is. So I'm assuming you just made it there and joined this edge back here.
Yep.
You could just attach your walls. To this other roof, you've got a nice clean.
Yep, exactly. It was frustrating for a while, but ended up figuring it out. So cool.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad.
Is it my turn now?
It is. Is that Alan?
No, Jacob.
Jacob. All right, Jacob.
So in my house, I'm having an issue where I tried to upload my model to that drive or the Google Drive, and it wouldn't let me. It says I don't have permission, so I couldn't do that.
Were you signed into your student email?
I don't know, maybe.
So if you're in Google, if you're signed in on a different account, Google account, or not signed in on to the same one, the Jacob Ormsby at 9820, then it won't let you load up anything there because it's not shared with that email. So you'd have to be logged into this account when you're uploading because you're set as an editor.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
He is a little weirdo.
So yeah, if you open it up, then or load it up, then I can download it and open it up.
It does, and it just makes me laugh so hard.
Anybody else wants to, while we're doing this, load
All
up
right,
their
it
model
should
if
be
you have
here.
questions. All right, I see it.
Not yet. She kind of did a little bit of a scrunch. What?
Alrighty.
All right, so if you go to the 3D there, right there up front, that little kick out right there.
Yes.
So I tried joining the wall, but that little short wall on right to the left there of your mouse. Nope, the other one. The little short, that one right there. It goes back like a foot. That's not covered by the roof. So then you get this jaunt up to the tall roof, and it just looks weird. But in the picture, it's all that whole back part is flat.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, can you like set that piece of roof back?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Let's see. And so I think in this condition, what we'll have to do is because, as you can see, it's right now it being one roof.
Like 7
Right.
years.
I don't think we can extend that back to that wall. Let's try that. So if you go to the Modify tab and Join Unjoin Roof, I'm going to select this edge and pick this wall. And so there, it actually did it. So we could keep it as one roof.
Okay, so
So I can do, so I'll do that again. So I'm in the 3D view.
okay,
And so I go to the Modify tab.
okay,
And then over there under Geometry where you have Cope, Cut, Join, there's some that aren't labeled.
okay,
And the one right next to Cope is Join Unjoin Roof.
nice. All right, cool.
Do you know how to get your wall to fill in this spot?
Well, so what I did, and it worked, is I just drew another section of wall from level 2 just up, as far up as it would go. And then I joined it and then attached the top to the top of the roof. That's all I did.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's definitely one way to go about it.
Is there a better way? Because I'm always looking for better ways.
Oh, nope, that's the way I did it on mine. But the other way that you could do it, and sometimes you have to, is if you are in the front elevation view.
Okay.
If you were to go up to the Modify tab, should automatically be up when you select your wall. And then you hit Edit Profile.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
You said,
Enjoy your dinner.
I didn't see that.
I love you.
So yeah, if you have the wall selected,
Okay.
and I put the Modify tab on the ribbon, there's an Edit Profile.
Okay.
So if you're to pick that, it'll allow you to draw. It's gonna warn you that it'll remove the stop and base constraints, because basically instead of using the constraints, we're just gonna draw the profile. And so if you were to pick up here where you could either just draw a line, I always like to do pick lines and then trim. I'll
Okay.
pick lines and then I'll pick the eaves. And then I'll escape once I've got these boundaries. Then I'll go up to trim corner. I'll trim all the corners. Then I'll pick this straggler because it won't, if I were to escape or if I were to finish now, it'll tell me that my boundary is messed up. So I can escape, hit delete that, hit finish. And it's telling me that it's unjoining because we had joined it to this roof before.
Okay, mine's not lining up right. My lines.
What do you mean?
So the lines don't attach. There's a gap.
So when you did the profile,
Oh, I see what you did. Okay. So, nope, that's wrong. Why is it not working? There it goes. Okay. The whole thing turned orange.
yeah, because what happened was is you had it joined, and this is and the way you did it was fine, but so you could just hit OK, and it's going to say that it's going to unjoin, and then it'll unjoin it, and instead of it being joined, you've now just changed the profile of the wall. So it's just another way to do it. The way you did it was fine, and that's actually the way I'd probably like to do it. So I'd have one wall here and draw on another wall.
Okay.
Well, if you watch that video that we did, we're having some issues attaching certain walls to the roofs. And in so some instances, we had to draw these profile lines in order to get it to do this. And so that's just another way, not necessarily a better way, but just another way.
Okay. Well, I got it. So it looks a lot better now.
Yeah.
So are we gonna get into, so like if you click on the ceiling, it goes transparent so you can see inside, and all the walls are, it's like vaulted ceilings almost.
Right.
You have to actually put in a ceiling for it to be like a flat area.
Yes.
Is that? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what we'll do is when we get into it, we'll actually draw our trusses in there too, and then we'll put a ceiling. So most of our houses are likely going to have the sheetrock ceilings are going to just be attached to the bottom of the trusses.
Okay.
And so, yeah, usually ceilings are closer to the last thing you do. You're getting your exterior all set up, laid out, get your exterior building dialed in, and then you'd go back in and start laying out your interior. I mean, often it's done simultaneously or depending on what you're getting from the architect or engineer, depending on what you're doing. So, but yeah, ceilings are typically the last thing. They're also the last thing that are built in construction too. So often you start with the foundation, exterior walls, roof, move on to your interior walls, and then start adding your ceiling elements.
All right, cool. Well, that was the only thing that was holding me up.
Awesome. It looks like you got the slope line in here good, and really that's all for this submittal, and I think you got it on the sheet. Yeah, it looks good. That's what I was expecting, but I recognize that there's a lot more things to deal with when you're dealing with all these different roofs. So